and all is still go as we monitor our status for it. Good luck and Godspeed.
Have you ever had a premonition, a feeling that something dreadful was about to happen?
No, Mother, I have not been drinking.
Do you happen to have a pair of birds that are just friendly?
We all go a little mad sometimes.
I have to go back into the past once more, just once more.
This is HitchPod, a podcast counting down the 20 best movies of the wonderful 20th century director Alfred Hitchcock. In this podcast, we rewatch a Hitchcock movie and then we talk about it. I'm Dan Lipke and I'm climbing carefully onto a stepladder.
And I'm Kat Jones and I'm staring at a portrait of my great-grandmother because this time around we're rewatching the fourth best Hitchcock movie as voted on by our listeners, Vertigo from 1958.
Yes, 1958. So what happened in 1958?
Apparently the first Pizza Hut opened in Wichita, Kansas.
Yes, and hula hoops, they were all the rage.
Hang on, I feel like we've had hula hoops before in our previous year recaps.
I don't think we have, no. I think
Goodness me.
Maybe hula hoops became increasingly trendy one year. But this might have been the peak of them. More than 100 million of them were sold in the first year on the market, which was allegedly this year.
And, of course, they probably were made of cane or something prior to this, and now they're made of plastic.
Plastic, yes, so that's much better for everybody.
The most popular book in the US, at least, was Dr. Zhivago. That was by Boris Pasternak, and it was set during the Russian Revolution and the Civil War, of course, and tells the story of a doctor caught between his love life and the deepening conflicts of that time, and it later became a movie in 1965.
Yes. In music terms, we had novelty songs such as the Purple People Eater was dominating the chart. So lots of goofy songs.
What a time.
Throwing things out of the chart. But how did that impact the Grammys?
Well, thank goodness Ella Fitzgerald was still happening. She became the first woman to win multiple Grammys for Best Female Vocal Performance, Best Individual Jazz Performance. And she really has been doing sing the Irving Berlin songbook, and Ella Fitzgerald sings the Duke Ellington songbook.
So she was singing all the songbooks and getting Grammys for them.
Good on her, and well deserved.
Yes.
And that has aged well, unlike the Purple People Eater.
Yes. We also have physicists Charles Townes and Arthur Shallow. They first wrote about the concept of laser technology. So they didn't actually build the lasers. They just said, lasers could work if you kind of did things with light and amplified it and focused it in the right area. So that's aged well as well.
Good work. And do you want to do The Onion? What
yes, well, ordinarily we'd have something in here from The Onion's Guide to Our Dumb Century, but when I was flipping through the book, they didn't have an entry for 1958 because 1958 apparently wasn't a funny year.
Yeah, as confirmed by the song Purple People Eater not being at all funny.
Yes, perhaps an explanation for what was going on in 1958 can be found from their front page dated July 19th, 1957, which had a headline of "Everything's Nifty. Swellness in America at all-time high. All Americans pleased as punch." So everything's just going along smoothly.
Yep.
No need to worry. So nothing interesting happened in 1958 except perhaps for...
Vertigo was released.
Yes. And of course, you'll be recapping that movie shortly. But before you do so, we will remind all our listeners that our HitchPod episodes are all now on YouTube. If that's how you prefer to listen. I know a lot of people listen to podcasts via YouTube. So if you go to youtube.hitchpodonline.com, you can listen to them there. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter. Go to newsletter.hitchpodonline.com, and that's where I cover a wide variety of topics, one of which is movies and occasionally specifically Hitchcock movies.
And the stories of Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, all kinds of things.
As we're recording this, it's Happy Sherlock Holmes Day or something today.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I'm not quite sure what that means, but presumably you're supposed to wear a ribbon to raise money for Sherlock Holmes.
And solve mysteries.
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you a bit of a recap now of Vertigo, a bit shorter than last time. If you want a long recap, listen to our previous Vertigo episode from years ago.
That's out behind the paywall. Yeah, I think it was 2016 or something, 17.
Amazing. Okay, so we start with a police chase over the San Francisco rooftops, and Detective John Ferguson, Scotty, he's played by Jimmy Stewart, he watches another policeman fall to his death and promptly develops an understandable fear of heights.
Yes.
Probably PTSD and a whole lot of other things. Cut to sometime later, and he's having a conversation between Scotty and Midge. Midge is his ex-fiancée, but still friend.
Yes.
He seems to get most of his meals at her apartment.
Yeah, she's designing bras in the background. Yeah, they're giving him good advice.
She's trying to help him overcome his titular vertigo, but to no avail.
Yes.
Instead, Scotty meets up with an old college buddy a little bit later, Gavin, and Gavin asks him to follow his wife, Madeline, who is being incredibly weird,
Yes.
increasingly strange.
Yes.
Anyway, Scotty follows her to art museums and graves and all sorts of places up and down.
Florists.
Yeah, they do a bit. It's a bit of a car chase, but at a very slow pace.
Very leisurely.
And he learns that she is obsessing and obsessed and possibly possessed by Carlotta Valdez, her great-grandmother, who committed suicide after some relationship gone wrong. Anyway, next thing we know, Madeline is jumping into San Francisco Bay, trying to drown herself. She can't really remember this. Scotty leaps to her rescue and takes her back to his place, where he briefly looks after her and she recovers and then vanishes. She leaves in her own car. She doesn't poof into a puff of smoke. She's not Carlotta Valdez. Anyway, the next day, Madeline drops off a letter to Scotty saying thanks for his help, and one thing leads to another, and they spend the day together. They're pretty much out on a date here. They're pretty swiftly falling in love as this day progresses, just in the process of one day, which is convenient and fast in movies. Scotty tries to help Madeline overcome the possession of Carlotta, and he drives her to Carlotta's childhood home. Anyway, she is very struck by the bell tower. Madeline's running up the bell tower, off and up the stairs. I think this building now is a monastery.
Yes.
Scotty tries to follow her, but he suffers from vertigo halfway up. Of course he does. And next thing we know, Madeline has plummeted to her death.
Yes.
Lucky they fell in love during the previous course of the day.
Yep.
Because he's now quite obsessed with her. There is an inquest into her death, and the coroner gives Scotty a bit of a lecture about how useless he was, and then it's declared a suicide. Anyway, that doesn't prevent Scotty becoming depressed and checking into a sanatorium for a year. So he's finally getting some treatment here for all sorts of terrible trauma that he's had.
He's seen at least 2 people fall to their death in front of his very eyes.
Yeah. So eventually he recovers. He still remains obsessed with Madeline, and eventually he spots a woman who reminds him of her, follows her home, and asks her out.
As you do.
And this is Judy Barton, a bit more rough around the edges than Madeline. Anyway, except this is straight up where we learn that Judy was Madeline.
Yes.
She was part of a convoluted murder scheme. She raced up the bell tower stairs, and Gavin, the husband of the real Madeline, tossed his wife off the bell tower, and the two of them hid and snuck away later.
Yep.
So she was just an accomplice to murder, effectively. Judy decides not to tell Scotty any of this. It would put a bit of downer on the new relationship.
Yep.
She agrees to date him, and that doesn't prevent Scotty growing more and more obsessed and weird. So perhaps he's not completely recovered. He asks Judy to change her clothes and her hair to look more and more like Madeline. This makes her very uncomfortable.
Yes.
And it makes the viewer very uncomfortable. It's very cleverly done. Eventually, Scotty, still technically a detective, he spots Judy wearing a necklace that Madeline used to wear. So he deduces everything.
Yep.
He takes Judy to the bell tower.
On the Sherlock Holmes day, no less.
Yes.
He sorts it all out.
Good work, Scotty.
Elementary, my dear Judy.
He's still got what it takes.
Yes.
Anyway, he takes her to the bell tower, God knows why, to try and convince her to confess and to give us another chance for another dolly zoom. He's so angry as they climb the bell tower that he's cured of his vertigo. He gets to the top, and then Judy confesses to her role in the murder, and they were about to have a touching reconciliation, and then massive sort of pivot here. After they've briefly embraced, a nun suddenly emerges from the shadows. Nuns, of course, are petrifying.
Yes.
She's wearing the most petrifying nun outfit you can imagine. Anyway, she startles Judy. Judy lunges off the tower once again to her death, leaving presumably Scotty freshly re-traumatised, which is sadly where this movie ends for Scotty.
Yep.
And I presume he may go off to the mental health place for the rest of his days, I would imagine.
Well, we may come back to that when we posit some sequels.
The end. So that is the end of a very convoluted plot and a very enjoyable movie.
Are you tired of the same old picnic fare? Ready to add some sizzle to your outdoor dining experience? Look no further than Chicken Innuendo. Legs, breasts and thighs, too sensational to ignore. It starts with a bucket of chicken innuendo. It ends with lips, fingers, and all other extremities being licked. Catch a thief, catch a lover with chicken innuendo. All right, this is where we do 3 jokes and a limerick. So as I've done for pretty much every movie, I've gone away and written 3 jokes and a limerick based upon the movie Vertigo. So Kat's going to give me the thumbs up or thumbs down on these jokes, whether they're any good, whether they need a polish.
You can play along at home, thumbs up, thumbs down, except don't take both hands off the wheel at the same time if you're driving.
All right, here we go. I know Scotty is quite a bit older than Madeline, but I did think it was quite rude of her to look for his date of birth on those historical redwood tree rings.
I think you're getting a thumbs down on
Thumbs
that
down,
one.
fair enough, yeah.
They were in the forest for a minute, though, weren't they?
They were. And
They went everywhere on this one day.
Yep. Yep, all right. I like how tech-savvy Madeline's husband Gavin was. I mean, decades before people were buying followers on social media, he was there doing it in real life.
Oh, that's pretty bad. You're getting a thumbs down for that too.
Yep. All right. Last one. Who ultimately was most responsible for Judy's death at the end of the movie? Was it A, Scotty, B, Gavin, or C, Judy herself? No, the correct answer is D, that nun who popped out of nowhere at the top of the tower. Or, as she's known in the convent, none of the above.
Okay, you get a thumbs up for that one. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right. Now the limerick.
Limerick, yeah.
Lurking hidden atop a bell tower, waiting up there hour after hour, then springing to life to throw at your dead wife. It's a plan that needed a bit more brain power.
Very good.
There we go.
And of course, Gavin is never seen again.
No. Although we did posit in our previous podcast, he must have just been sitting up there for who knows how long, just waiting with his dead wife to throw her off the edge.
That's true.
There was another plot hole similar to that Gavin one that I was trying to make a joke and I just couldn't make it work. Like, it was even worse than those first two. When she wakes up in Scotty's house, her car is there. Scotty's car's there.
Yeah.
How'd you get both cars there? And I was trying to work out some way of, a joke where maybe a mechanic helped him, and a plot mechanic, but I couldn't quite make the joke work.
Yes, no, we can imagine. We're getting the vibe of that joke.
Yeah.
That joke would have got a thumbs up if you'd been able to make it work.
I couldn't make it work.
Excellent. Yeah, there were a couple of little plot holes like that. But other than that, how did you find the rewatch?
I'd completely forgotten most of the plot details of the murder and how Judy fit into the story. I didn't remember that Judy was actually Madeline.
Because you had you watched it the first time was your first time of watching,
Yes.
whereas it was probably my third or fourth time. So I was already onto my I knew what the plot. I knew what was coming.
Yeah. I had the kind of the big picture idea, but I was fuzzy on some of the details. But overall, I enjoyed it a lot more the second time around. The first time I think I didn't really know where the story was going, and I found it hard to get into the rhythm. You had that very long pedestrian car chase, as you described it, and it was kind of fun the first time around to go. I don't know where this is going. I'm along for the ride. But I do remember feeling that first time as if I was second guessing what the movie was trying to do. Yeah. And this time around, there was none of that. I was just more relaxed. I was just, all right, I get the general shape of this movie. I'm going to enjoy it. And and it kind of allowed me to go along for the ride. And I think I enjoyed it a lot more.
Yeah, I enjoyed it more too this time. And I think there's cleverly so much in it for the rewatch. So whether Hitch deliberately planted all of these extra seeds, but there's so much in it once you know which way the story's going.
Yeah. And now that I've been reminded of the kind of the plot twists that I was fuzzy on, I now want to watch it a third time. So I was just like, while they're still fresh in my memory.
Yeah, very clever. And that's why I think that I'm enjoying it more the more times I watch it. So that's the same with everyone out there. If you've only seen it once or even twice, might be worth doing another watch. So one of the other things that I found interesting this time was it makes sort of Scotty Jimmy Stewart out to be the victim here in a way. And the real victims were really Judy and Madeline, of course. They were both victims of both Gavin, the husband, and of Jimmy Stewart, Scotty. But perhaps we weren't sufficiently in Judy's point of view, and we couldn't be at the start. But we have a real point of view switch here in some ways, because we're in Jimmy Stewart's head, and then suddenly we're kind of in Judy's head in the middle of the movie. And I really enjoyed that this time, sort of realising that we're now trying to take her perspective. And that was where we found out, was it too much information she gave us that gave away the whole plot? And maybe it would have been better to leave that to the end. But of course, now that we're in her head, we kind of needed to know that.
That's fair.
So I think the plot, that point of view switch was really clever, and I found that really destabilising for for the viewer, because you were really trying to take Scotty's point of view, and then all of a sudden you got sort of moved around there.
Yeah.
That's really clever.
Yeah, and he now becomes the antagonist. Like he's the one trying to change her, and ultimately getting her in a position where she'll fall to her death. He becomes because we don't really go back into his head once Judy, the version of Judy, shows up, do we? Like it's pretty much always from her perspective.
Yeah, I think it's really clever. And the other thing is that this is made out to be, Hitchcock made this creepy movie about men manipulating women. How creepy is that? Well, actually, it's really shining a light on it, because this happened all the time. Yeah. Men would say, "Oh, can't you dress up a bit better? Can't you wear stockings? Can't you wear heels?" Like in that day and age, there was a lot of men telling women what they could and couldn't do. And I think it's shining a light on it and exaggerating how creepy it is when that happens and how uncomfortable it makes a woman feel.
I wonder if in 1958 or 59, whether it would have, whether men would have interpreted it as Jimmy Stewart going too far, or whether it would have just been, this is kind of normal, or maybe only slightly exaggerated. Like to modernise, it definitely looks like, oh, Jesus, Jimmy, or Scotty, you've gone a bit far here trying to twist it. But maybe it felt that way back at the time as well.
I mean, that whole thing of a man being in the women's shop and the women's hairdresser and all of that giving instructions, the various shop assistants maybe thought it was a bit weird, but they kind of went along with it. And we have seen it in other movies, the man in the shop choosing something for the woman. It's not an uncommon thing in the 1950s. Yeah. So I think that was really very interesting. And to start with, you sort of thought, well, maybe it's him being a detective trying to go, if I make her look a little bit more, will I be able to work this out? And then you realise, no, it's just obsession.
It's just
so that's
obsession,
interesting too.
Yeah.
I also found that Midge was sort of the unlucky in love sort of character, the sidekick. But she's kind of the career woman who escaped.
Yeah, that's true.
She escaped from Scotty. She didn't break off the engagement perhaps, but look what she escaped. And I think that's a really interesting contrast.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, she basically helped him recover she was there.
Yeah, she was kind and lovely and the right woman.
Yeah, and then eventually just left.
Yeah.
Said, I've had enough of this.
I've had enough of this, yeah. The other thing, Kim Novak, the lead here, is a famous Hitchcock blonde. But most of the famous Hitchcock blondes, I just realised, were playing a part within the movie. Yes. So they were actresses playing a part in the movie where they were playing a part. So it's Judy playing a part here of Madeline. Yep. It was in North by Northwest, Eve Kendall is acting as the girlfriend and the agent, but she's playing a part. Alicia in Notorious, she's acting in her role, undercover in that spy role. And even Marion Crane, kind of taking on, after she's stolen the money, taking on a fake name in Psycho. Yeah. I feel like it's kind of Hitchcock making a point about these blondes, that, dyeing your hair blonde is playing a part and taking a part is what a lot of women, unhappy women, do. They have to do it. Yep. And they have to play these roles and they're forced to take on these personas that aren't really them. Yeah. And that would have been the case even in a lot of marriages and so on in that day and age, and even now, I might say. So I think that it's so fascinating and it's such an interesting play on society that Hitchcock was able to do this. And it's only just really watching this movie that it's really occurred to me how much those women were just acting in an acting role. The happy ones are the kind of the brunettes who don't have to act. They're a bit more themselves. They're a bit more funny. They're allowed to be a bit more loose. They're allowed to work. They're not, it's not that simple. They're not always brunettes. Yeah. But there is a certain woman in the Hitchcock movies, the certain career woman that is just as predominant as the blondes, but has a totally different role in society and is much happier. And Hitch is making a great point there. Hitch and or Alma, whoever influenced that. I think it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, no, I had not thought of that previously, but that's good. What about let's have a look at the most famous scene in the movie and discuss whether it was overrated or not. So the most famous scene is almost certainly the staircase dolly zoom, the first time Scotty's chasing Madeline up the bell tower. Is this one overrated?
No, it's not. It's just fabulous. It's so great.
Yeah, it's the first ever dolly zoom, and it's become shorthand for any kind of disorientation or sudden shock that just literally spins you out. It makes you feel uncomfortable and out of place. So it's been in, I think we mentioned a few the last time we did cover this, but Jaws, Goodfellas, Lord of the Rings, Shaun of the Dead, and now most recently, since we recorded, every time in Severance, when an employee transitions between their innie and outie states, there's a bit of a dolly zoom.
So great.
Yeah.
And recently in Survivor, the reality TV show, to depict sort of ominous gloom in the jungle, in Australian Survivor, I should say.
Yep.
Ominous gloom in the jungle is always done with a bit of a dolly zoom by obviously someone who's just a total fan. The dolly zoom was created by Erman Roberts. He was a second unit cameraman and he devised this method for the film. Hitchcock asked Roberts to help him to create a shot that sort of gave you the feeling of being drunk or maybe after fainting at a party. So really, really clever technique that he's managed to create, but also Hitchcock's really, doubled down and going, yep, I'm putting that in my movie. It was brand new and no one else had done it. Incredible.
Yep. Fantastic. Let's go the other way. What's an underrated scene from this movie on the second viewing? Anything stand out to you?
I think it's the scene here with Midge and Scotty when they first talk, and it sets up the character of Scotty, their relationship, what he's like, what she's like, and then where his vertigos come from and how he's trying to deal with it with this aversion therapy. So a lot of sort of psychological background that the viewer wouldn't have known necessarily unless they were psychologists or psychiatrists.
It's a very efficient scene.
Yeah.
That's covers a lot of things, some character, some plot, some, as you mentioned, all these methods of treatment. Yeah, it's very good.
The only thing I didn't like about that scene was the number of times Scotty and maybe Midge repeated the word acrophobia. They were explaining acrophobia and they kept saying acrophobia, but they were pronouncing it as agoraphobia.
Oh, right.
And which wasn't much of a thing in 1958. So I looked it up on Google Ngram Viewer, where you can look up the words over time. And there was a sharp increase in agoraphobia in 1980, which is, of course, kind of fear of leaving the house effectively. So in 1980, that became massively popular in every soap opera, I reckon. Okay. So that's where we know agoraphobia, in common use, but acrophobia has never shifted. It's remained at minuscule levels of quotes. So I guess back then it wouldn't have mattered if you said acro or agoraphobia. They're one phoneme difference, and I found it a little bit distracting because.
Okay, I don't think I even noticed what that was happening. So I did enjoy Midge as a character. I think we mentioned she escaped from Scotty, but she's in a different movie. Like she would be part of some weird love triangle, and you kind of got hints of it. Like you had,
and she'd win.
Like the scene where she reveals her painting and she's painted her own face onto the portrait of Carlotta. So there's just a little bit of comic relief there, but she's never really like a viable alternative. She's just this comic love interest and endlessly supportive until, she says that's
She still
enough.
wishes she was with Scotty. You can see that in the close-ups on her longing face and so on. But I really loved putting her own face in the portrait of Carlotta because I felt like that was kind of a bit cruel and also a bit of an epic troll as well because it really upset him. And it makes me wonder how much Midge had to do with, perpetuating Scotty's acrophobia. Is she getting him up on footstools all the time, close to the window, just to say, oh, it's a aversion therapy, but no, she's actually trying to make him worse. Yeah.
Yes. Now, this movie was based on a 1954 French novel, D'entre les morts, which translates to From Among the Dead. But we're not reading that because I'm not sure there is an English translation, or if there is, it was far too hard to find.
We couldn't even find the French. Anyway, we'd have to learn French first if we wanted to read it.
But if you are looking for a Vertigo-esque story to read, we can highly recommend the book The Divide by Morgan Richter. This is a neo-noir thriller, and it touches on many of the same ideas as Vertigo, but with a few modern and unexpected plot twists. So
fabulous.
So check that one out, The Divide by Morgan Richter. So find it at your library, your bookstore, wherever.
Over on Patreon, we've gone back to watching some of the movies from the Hitchcock era that have kind of Hitchcock-esque qualities. So we just watched The Postman Always Rings Twice. It was not at all what we expected.
No,
it was nothing
no
to
postman to be found.
No postman. And
spoiler.
Even now, I find the title, I can't remember the movie from the title.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was still really enjoyable. So for a couple of bucks a month, you can listen to that and dozens of other movies we've discussed, including our original episodes on every single Hitchcock movie.
All of them. Yep.
Wait till when there's a special on TCM or whatever. If you're watching another, Strangers on a Train, you can go back if you've got a Patreon and re-listen to us talking about it.
Yep. So let's do, speaking of our listeners and our Patreon listeners in particular, let's do some stats on the 4th spot ranking, which is where Vertigo came in. Highest ranking, of course, first.
Number 1.
Lots and lots of first place rankings for this one. It's very popular.
And of course, we're coming up with, this is the number 4 movie, right? So the lowest ranking is probably pretty high as well. Was it 20?
26th was the lowest ranking we got, which was a little
Someone
bit
who
lower
hated
than I
the
expected.
movie.
Someone really doesn't like Vertigo.
'Cause
Perhaps
that's
only
their
watched
worst.
it once.
I mean, it's possibly the 26. I mean, that's possibly the worst movie on that person's.
Maybe.
How many people have watched more than 26 movies?
Yeah. About 91% of people had it in the top 20.
Right.
That includes people who didn't have it in their list at all. So perhaps some of the 9% who didn't have it in the top 20 had just never seen it. Percentage in the top 10, 74%.
Yeah,
so
not
we're
surprising.
very strong here. And usually we check the differences between our patrons and our non-patrons when we first did this list because the patrons got extra weighting to their votes. But this one would have made no difference if the patrons had been given normal weighting. Both parties thought it was the 4th best overall.
Interesting. And then you did some social media polls as well. So what did we end up with say, your favourite male character?
Well, I think it's probably unsurprising that 79% of people said Scotty was their favourite male character. My vote was, as always, for the coroner. Love the coroner.
The coroner's fabulous,
Yes.
yeah. And what about the famous female character? Was that Midge?
The favourite female character? No, it was 64% of people went for Madeline/Judy.
Right. So Judy Madeline didn't split the votes?
No, I combined them as one option.
Okay.
I also had the question, what's the highest you can go before suffering a fear of heights? The options there were stepladder, rooftop, bell tower, or out of space.
Oh, good grief.
50% of people said a stepladder. So
Okay.
lots of people scared of heights, such as myself.
I don't have a fear. I don't have any acrophobia beyond the instinctive stomach tightening at heights. But for you, Dan, I'm guessing tiptoes. Like tiptoes is about as high as you could go.
Yeah, I can get up on a stepladder.
I've seen you do calf raises and you barely move your heels off the ground. So is that because of the acrophobia?
Yeah, and bad calves.
Yeah.
Last question was, have you ever been possessed by your great-grandmother? 50% of people said only as part of a needlessly complicated murder plan. So
okay.
That's
Well,
good.
it's justified.
Yes. We had some favourite scenes. We asked people to mention their favourite scenes. Lots of people liked the nightmare. So the nightmare was where, the spinny wheels and... Yeah, so...
Really? I would have voted to leave that out.
Well, there you go. So you're...
Controversial.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Just odd ones like Scotty watching Madeline in the flower shop, that kind of thing. But yeah, no, the nightmare or the dream sequence that was mentioned multiple times. So there you go. What about our ranking? So we both had this much lower on our first. We were like that person who had it 26th. We both had it much lower.
I had it 17th. And I will be bumping this up for sure. Where are you going to... You had it 11th?
I had it 11th, yeah. So I definitely liked it much more on the rewatch. I think,
where are you going to put it?
I think it would probably make my top 10. Based on the ones we've rewatched so far, and we're now up to our 17th movie, I would probably chuck it in at number 6, just after Notorious and just before Strangers on a Train. I think.
That's bumping right up, although there are a few
There's
more
three more to come.
3 more to come.
So it could, but it's going no lower than 9, so it's now in my top 10.
Interesting, it's in your top 10. Well, I'm not sure if it'll make my top 10 in the end because I'm putting it under Dial M for Murder.
Okay.
I still like... It's bumped up definitely so far. It's up to number 9 for me.
Yeah. So it could go as low as 12, but no lower. So that's a big jump for Vertigo.
A big jump
from
for both of us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now we're going to do a deep dive into a scene.
But I don't know you, and you don't know me. My name is Madeline Astor.
My name's John Ferguson.
It's a good, strong name. Do your friends call you John or Jack?
Oh, John, mostly. Old friends call me John. Acquaintances call me Scotty.
I shall call you Mr. Ferguson.
Oh, gee whiz, I wouldn't like that. Oh, no. And after what happened this afternoon, I should think maybe you'd call me Scotty. Maybe even John.
Well, I prefer John. There, that's done. And what do you do, John?
Well, just wander about.
That's a good occupation. And you live here alone? One shouldn't live alone.
Some people prefer it, you know.
No, it's wrong. I married you now.
Will you tell me something? Has this ever happened to you before?
What?
Falling into San Francisco Bay.
Oh, no. No, it's never happened before.
So yeah, that's part of the meet cute between, like I guess it's sort of a meet cute.
I guess so. a wet meet cute.
A wet meet cute, yes. That's Scotty and Madeline introducing themselves to one another for the first time. And
is that after she wakes up or before?
it's after she's woken up in his house, in his bed, with no clothes on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So yeah, we chose this as a deep dive because there's some really good stuff in here that's really only obvious on a rewatch. I think so the first time around, you think this is all about Scotty trying to help Madeline. He's rescued her from this terrible situation where she's almost killed herself while possibly being possessed, and he's trying to work out what she remembers and what she doesn't, whether she's possessed or mentally ill or going crazy or. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously attracted to her, but he's also doing his job. But the second time you watch the film, assuming you remember the twist, you realise that it's Madeline who's doing all the probing. This is nothing. Yeah. This is not Scotty doing the work at all. This is Madeline. She's pretending that she doesn't remember what's going on.
She's fully in charge of this scene.
Exactly. She's trying to lure Scotty in, and of course she'll succeed. Maybe similar. Maybe she's attracted to him, but she's also primarily just doing her job. She's been paid to do this. She's trying to sucker him in to get him to do this. So I think that's a really good twist that you have no idea the first time you watch it.
Yeah,
she seems like a damsel in distress, and look at this heroic man trying to help her.
And even just the slow car chase earlier, the whole thing is a lot more fun knowing that she's leading him on and knows he's there and is leading him.
Yeah, he thinks he's being, all sneaky and following her around and making sure she doesn't spot him. She knows he's there. Yeah. She has to know he's there, otherwise what's the point of doing any of this?
That's right. And the whole thing is the name talk is so much fun, isn't it? Yeah. Because it feels like it's just, introducing themselves and a bit of banter, but the second time, it's really clever because he's talking about his name, but it's actually her name that is more obscure.
Yeah, she's going by a completely different name as well. So he's got, my friends call me John, acquaintances call me Scotty. She says, I shall call you Mr. Ferguson. And then, but no, she's the one. Like, there's no talk of her name being a fake name, but it absolutely is. Her name's not Madeline. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very, very good scene that plays a couple of different ways depending on whether you know the twist or not. And yeah, I think it's a very, very good scene.
Yes, because she has a little smile on her face when she's doing it, which is, and I've got many names.
Yes.
I thought the acquaintances call me Scotty and friends call me John. It should be the reverse, shouldn't it?
I would have thought so, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's great. And there's one of the reasons why, the rewatch makes you love this film a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Some shampoos keep you looking young. Some shampoos keep you looking innocent. But only Garnier Young and Innocent keeps you looking young and innocent. Young and Innocent shampoo, because who wants old guilty hair? All right, so it's time for the Hitchcock do-over. This is where we follow in Hitchcock's very own footsteps. He'd like to redo ideas from his own movies. He upgraded the 39 Steps to North by Northwest. He redid The Man Who Knew Too Much. So it would take some good ideas, then do them even better the second time around. So if you had further 67 years to think about it, what would he change if he did Vertigo a second time around?
Well, first up, he would probably change the title. Are we going to hear some alternate titles?
Yes. As suggested by Freddie on Patreon, we do ask ChatGPT for alternative titles. So here's some options. Thumbs up or thumbs down on these. The Fall and Rise of Judy Barton.
Definitely thumbs down.
I don't mind that one. She does fall and then she rises, so I don't mind that. But especially since you'd go 75% of the way through the movie with no character named Judy Barton. I think that would be quite an interesting.
Yes, that would be an interesting title, wouldn't it? If you didn't know. I think just The Fall and Rise is not bad on its own.
Yeah. The second one suggested the Spinning Detective.
Is there sort of a riff on the singing
I
detective?
think so.
Which hardly anyone knows existed back in the 80s.
Yep. And the last two were Falling for You, which feels a little bit obvious.
It feels a bit like a rom-com.
Yeah, and Over the Edge. So a little bit dark, perhaps.
Over the Edge twice.
Yes. So once we've got whatever change in title we come up with, maybe we stick with Vertigo.
People keep telling me GPT is getting better, but is it? It's not getting any better.
I'm not sure it's getting better because those are just the most interesting ones from the list that it gives me. I have to pick and choose.
Let's assume your prompt is perfect, but it's still not really giving us very much that's creative.
No.
Anyway, taking the temperature of our artificial intelligence to see whether it's going to take over the world. Not yet.
Not yet.
Not going to take over the movie world anyway.
No. Which modern actors, though, would Hitchcock cast in the parts if it was redone by Hitchcock himself?
Well, first up, we just have to ask who's Florence Pugh going to play? I'm not sure she's playing anyone. Let's
Oh,
put
really?
her-
We're getting rid of Florence?
Get rid of Florence.
Oh, poor Florence.
So, did you have anyone else for Madeline then?
Well, the only one that occurred to me, because I assumed you'd go with Florence Pugh for Madeline, but what about Anya Taylor-Joy from The Queen's Gambit and Furiosa? She's got a very distinctive look, but I just worry if it's maybe a little bit too distinctive.
It needs to be distinctive so that you can... Well, yeah, it might be too distinctive, so she may still look the same with a different coloured hair.
Yeah. So
It's got to be someone who looks... Because Judy looks quite different to Madeline, and that's cleverly done. I think change her hair and she would also look... quite different.
Well, she was a redhead in the Queen's Gambit, and she's had different colour hairs in other things. So
yeah, I think that's
but
good.
she's still pretty recognisable no matter what.
Yeah. Well, he has to recognise her, right? She walks past in the street in a different coloured suit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. All right, let's go with that then.
let's go with her. What about Scotty?
I've nominated here Jake Gyllenhaal from Donnie Darko and Brokeback Mountain.
He must be about 70 by now, is
No,
he?
he's
In his 50s.
he's pretty similar age, I think, to Jimmy Stewart. He's,
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, he's and he's got big sad eyes. I think he could do the kind of haunted look pretty well.
Yeah, could do. Okay, yeah.
What
that's
about
good.
Midge? Have you got anybody for Midge?
Well, if we're ruling out Florence Pugh, which I am, I think these days Midge is a chance to have the secondary character bring a little bit more diversity than perhaps we usually get. I go for Dishan Latchman from Severance
Oh, okay.
and Jurassic World. I think she would be good. Dishan Latchman.
Okay. And what about Gavin, the evil husband manipulating
Another
things?
grey-haired dude in his 50s. I mean, there's thousands to
Well,
choose from.
I deliberately, once I thought Jake Gyllenhaal for Scotty, I thought, all right, who was born the same year? Because they're college buddies, so they have to be
Yes.
a very similar age to make it work. And I discovered that Macaulay Culkin was born in the same year. And because Macaulay Culkin was 8 years old last time he was in movies, you don't really think of him as being an older man. But
He's been trying to get a movie part ever since.
Yeah, so Macaulay Culkin, I think, can be Gavin.
Excellent.
Yes.
So now we come to options for a sequel.
Yep. So the reboot's a success.
Yeah.
What do we do with it?
There's plenty of options here because we're left on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Yep.
So
A bell tower.
a bell tower hanger.
Yep.
This is another thriller, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's Gavin coming back.
Yes, because he would hear about this second death, and he would probably work out that Scotty's cracked the case, right? There would be no other reason why she would have been up there unless Scotty had worked it out.
Yeah, particularly if he knows Scotty was there. Imagine the coroner the second time around. I feel like the opening scene has to be the coroner.
The opening crawl is just the coroner just dressing him down again. I can't believe this happened.
And then you cut to the credits.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah,
that's definitely the case.
Yeah.
So, and he's under suspicion of murder if he's up there a
double
second
murder.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Although the nun was there, right? So
Yeah, the nun was there.
The nun testifies and then thank you, sister, and everyone gets off.
Yeah.
Although he'll get another dressing. Scotty will get another dressing down.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I assume that Gavin's coming back and trying to set up some incredibly elaborate murder scheme for him. That probably.
Well, Gavin's got another wife by now. I mean, we knew he had another woman on the side, so he probably wants her murdered as well.
Yeah.
Maybe he wants to get Scotty to do that murder and. But Scotty's in the mental hospital?
I assume he'd go back again. I mean, he went back third time. I think he's locked in there. I like the idea that maybe the nun is looking after Scotty because she's instigated this somehow. Well, she's had a part in it anyway. And maybe she's the one foiling the attempted murders. Forget all about Scotty's no longer the hero. The nun's coming in to save the day.
Maybe the nun was just Gavin dressed up. Maybe there's some kind of twist.
That's a good twist as well.
That's a very B-grade sequel.
That also blends a little bit
sequel.
of Psycho as well.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah.
Oh, yes, indeed. Or maybe not. Maybe we cut to the hospital post the coroner's inquest, and maybe Midge has become a nun to look after.
Yeah.
I like the idea that the hospital's on the grounds with the bell tower's right there.
Yep.
And he can see the bell tower out of his window of his room. And he's being looked after by a nun, and she turns around and it's Midge. And you just don't know if it's him imagining Midge, a la in Carlotta's picture, or if it really is Midge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we've got something
needs to
there.
happen. Yeah.
The title, I think, should be Vertigo with the number 2.
Oh, yes, Vertigo. Yeah, perfect.
What about an idea for a prequel? What kind of movie could prequelize this?
It's either is it Scotty and Gavin at college? That'd be pretty tedious.
Yeah, well, college antics, doing all the things, some college sex movie.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea of Midge and Scotty's kind of wacky engagement, because we know they were engaged.
Yeah.
There could have been all kinds of comical antics during their engagement.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. ChatGPT suggested if we went with that one, it could be called A Smidge of Midge.
A Smidge of Midge. That feels like the 8-part TV show, A Smidge of Midge.
Nah. Well, the alternative 8-part TV show is a buddy cop TV show with Scotty and the cop who fell to his death.
Oh, God, that's a dark ending of that one.
I would call it Rooftop Cops.
Oh, no. And they're constantly on the roof.
Yeah, they specialise in rooftop work. So the entire time they're just jumping. And this was just how the series ends, because up till then they'd been perfect at it.
Yeah.
And this was just a leap too far.
Wow.
Rooftop Cops.
That would be, if that was directed by Hitchcock, it's exactly what he usually does. You know what's going to happen.
Yep.
You just don't know when.
Yep.
They're jumping from roofs the whole time.
They're solving crimes on rooftops all the time. Anytime there's a crime on a rooftop,
you don't know if it's an 8-part, a 6-part,
Yep.
a 2-part,
Yep.
a 10-part.
Yep.
Could happen, and that way you can axe it at any moment if you pre-film the fall.
Yep.
I also like the idea of the comedy series, A Smidge of Midge, with Midge at work, because she was an underwear designer, wasn't she? That feels like a sort of place in, particularly the 1960s.
Yeah. Big workplace comedy with
antics around men, with women's underwear.
Some
blah, blah.
stuffy manager who's like can't even look at the women's underwear because he's so upset by it, and some gay fashion designer who's all into it, and
That feels like that right thing for the 60s.
Yes. All right. I think we've nailed all the alternatives. So, what should you watch next if you've enjoyed Vertigo, which I assume most of you have?
So the recommendation from various artificial intelligence sources is to watch Laura, 1944. This is a police detective falling in love with a woman whose murder he's investigating, which is a classic trope. That one stars Gene Tierney, Dana Andrews and Vincent Price.
Yeah, so that one looks interesting. Bit more recently, we've got Vanilla Sky. This always pops up as a Vertigo wannabe. A self-indulgent and vain publishing magnate finds his privileged life upended after a vehicular accident with a resentful lover. This stars Tom Cruise, Penelope Cruz, and Cameron Cruz. Cameron Diaz.
There's a lot of similar names there. I've never seen Vanilla Sky.
No, I haven't seen it either. I don't know. It's supposed to be pretty good.
Sounds like a good premise. It's got a good one-liner.
Yes.
Okay. And another one is What Lies Beneath from the year 2000. This is the wife of a university research scientist believes her Lakeside, Vermont home is haunted by a ghost and/or she is losing her mind. I have seen this movie starring Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. They're both excellent in that movie.
Yes.
Can't remember if it's a good film or not, but I do vaguely remember it.
It's definitely got Vertigo vibes according to everything I've read. But of course, if you don't like Vertigo, then don't watch those movies either.
You know what to avoid right now. But our next movie, what's that?
Ordinarily, it would be a face-off between Vertigo and the movie that beat it to the Best Picture Oscar. That movie was Gigi. But we did some preliminary research on Gigi, and we learned that it has aged even worse than most movies of the era. We did watch Tom Jones last month, and that aged terribly, just in terms of comedic style. But Gigi has aged worse in ways that are perhaps even less tasteful. So we're going to make an executive decision here that we're going to skip Gigi. We're going to say, no, we're not
No.
going to watch that. We're going to skip a terrible movie.
We're going to
that will make us
cancel it. We're
unhappy.
going to cancel it, in fact.
Yes. So instead, we've decided that we will go with the Best Picture winner from the previous year, from 1957. This is a movie that Hitchcock would have seen, so he would have actually really been able to learn from this. All the other ones that we compare it to are ones that were going on simultaneously, so he couldn't really
Yes.
learn anything. This time he could have learned something from The Bridge on the River Kwai. So that's what we'll be watching next month. And we will compare it with Vertigo and see if Hitch should have taken some lessons from The Bridge on the River Kwai. But until then, I'm Dan Lipke, dolly zooming in a bell tower.
And I'm Kat Jones, copying criticism from the coroner. Thank you for listening to HitchPod. Please come and talk to us on
Blue Sky
at
HitchPodOnline.com.
or on Facebook by searching for HitchPod. And you can also email us directly at feedback@hitchpodonline.com. And if you want more Hitchcock content, please consider becoming a HitchPod supporter. Just go to patreon.com/HitchPod. And for as little as $2 a month, you can get access to our Season 1 coverage of every single Hitchcock movie, as well as bonus episodes on Hitchcock-esque movies. Invitations also to watch live rewatches and much, much more.
It is a pity that, knowing her suicidal tendencies, he did not make a greater effort the second time. But we are not here to pass judgment on Mr. Ferguson's lack of initiative.